Please turn in your gray hymnal to number 134, Our World is One World. Please rise. Our world is one world. What touches one affects us all. The seas that wash us round about, the clouds that cover us, the rains that fall. Our world is one world. The thoughts we think affect us all. The way we build our attitudes with love or hate we make, a bridge or wall. Our world is one world. Its ways of wealth affect us all. The way we spend, the way we share, who are the rich or poor, who stand or fall. Our world is one world, just like a ship that bears us all, where fear and greed make many holes, but where our hearts can hear a different call.
Seven weeks ago, Thupten Punsak used the following words to introduce the talk he gave for us, standing right here. He said, I'm convinced that we stand at a crossroad in human evolution. I'm not talking about biological evolution. I'm talking about something much more profound than that. I'm talking about an evolution of consciousness itself. I was really struck when I heard these words, not only because they're compelling and not only because I believe them, but also because I knew then that I'd be giving this talk just a short time later. And I knew that his words could easily have served as an introduction for my talk as well. And so they have. Thanks, Punsak. So, an evolution of human consciousness, known as a noosphere, is the subject of my talk today. Although the term was coined by Edouard Leroy in 1927, I realize 99 years ago, that's almost a century, and developed further by the philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin in the 30s and 40s. I first learned about it through the writings of José Argüelles. And so in this talk, I focused on Argüelles' work more than the work of any other of the thinkers. I'd originally planned to give this talk around Earth Day. I swapped with Wendy Raver. Come see her around Earth Day. You can pray for her. She just had some surgery, so she couldn't be with us here today. But I'm here. So, but I had originally planned to give this talk around Earth Day, being that Argüelles believed very strongly about taking care of the Earth. In 1969, a year before Earth Day was born, he organized a festival at the college where he was teaching, UC Davis. At this festival, his students used art interactively to teach visitors about activism, wellness, and the environment. Following the UN's declaration of Earth Day the next year in 1970, Argüelles changed the name of his festival to the Whole Earth Festival. And the festival has continued to this day, even beyond his passing in 2011. Argüelles' deep respect for the Earth demonstrates that he believed with Unitarian Universalists in the seventh Unitarian Universalist principle, the need for respect for the interdependent web of all existence, of which all of us are a part. When I used to think of this principle, I thought of the biosphere, food webs, the water cycle, the need to save rainforests, prevent extinction. And Argüelles was certainly on board with that. But he didn't stop there. He envisioned a coming interconnection not only of biological life, but also of consciousness, called the noosphere, drawing mostly on the work of Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, and before him, the work of geochemist and mineralogist Vladimir Ivanich Vernadst. Forgive me if I mispronounce your name, Vladimir. Best known for developing the concepts of the biosphere, helping lay the foundations for the idea of the noosphere. So noosphere is from the Greek noos, or mind, and from the word sphere. Sphere is used in words like biosphere, which is a global ecological zone where all life on Earth exists, integrating various ecosystems and biotic communities. So this mind sphere is a global zone where all thought or consciousness becomes integrated, interconnected, or shared as if part of one interconnected conscious organism. Argüelles said that this shift to shared or collective consciousness is fundamental to the next stage of human and terrestrial evolution. That is, it's bound to happen, and in fact, it is happening. So, if the noosphere is emerging, then others will be aware of it, even if they're not aware of Teilhard or Argüelles' writings, because it is not either their inventions, but it is a fact that's slowly becoming our reality. Okay, so you've heard of Argüelles' words about it from the reading, and up until now I've described it further using Argüelles' framework, along with brief mention of some of the other thinkers that laid the groundwork for it. But when talking about concepts like this, I always find it helpful to describe it in my own words. In my original blurb for this service, Ruth said it had to be cut down, so you didn't see it, so I'll read it for you now. My original blurb, I used the metaphor of our hands not thinking twice about taking care of a bodily injury that's on another part of our body. The hand and the knee, for example, are not separate, but are part of the greater whole. Right? The hand's not going to say, knee, I don't have time for you. I got to do hand stuff. They're not individual organisms, but they're part of one organism. For me, this metaphor is not just an illustration of what I've read about the noosphere, but also a metaphor that illustrates certain interactions I had well before I even heard of the word noosphere. So I'd like now to talk about some interactions I've had that convinced me of the emergence of this noosphere. And I'd like to open it up after my talk in case some of you would want to share your own interactions which illustrate the emergence or the existence of the noosphere in your own lives. Mary told me a story lately that I asked her to share, which she said she'd do later, and I'll invite any of you to do the same. Or you know, like I like to do when I invite speakers here, or you just share a thought or a question, and we can have a little dialogue before we hit the food next door. And as you can tell, I originally, if any of you read the email that went out, I was thinking of doing this spontaneously, but I decided to use my notes after all. But if you want to, actually pretty much everything I'm saying is on my Medium page, so if anyone wants to check it out, it's Ruth sent out a link. So the examples that I'm about to share may sound trivial, but the mechanics of these interactions were so outside my understanding of human consciousness that I once thought was isolated in each one of us as individuals. I mean, I've always believed in empathy and caring for each other, but what I experienced in these examples seemed to go beyond these realities. So at one point in my life, this was before I was married to Jade, I always left my car door unlocked, and I actually left the keys in the ignition. And here's where I'm going to be spontaneous, because I met a guy recently who was walking around thinking, you know, we have enough cars. Why don't we just share? Why don't people just leave their car doors open? So I wish I met him then, because then we could have made it happen. But maybe it's still, you know, still to happen. We have some time here. But anyway, leaving my door unlocked, saying all that, I lost my place. So I ran into a friend who suggested getting a bite to eat. I wasn't hungry, but suddenly I had a strong knowing to walk to my car and open the door. There I found a Chipotle bag, and it was warm, as if just purchased. I told my friend I wasn't hungry, but asked him if he'd like Chipotle, or if he liked Chipotle. He said he loved it, and so he had his hunger satisfied, and we got to catch up. I can't be sure who left that bag, but the timing was impeccable, and it was pretty amazing that I knew to look in my car at that moment. It seems that the same consciousness that led to somebody buying Chipotle and leaving it in my car also informed me to retrieve it. Now, I will add something else that I didn't write, because I actually do have a suspicion of who this was. I happened to be, I think many of you know I grew up evangelical, and I spent, well, maybe you don't know this part, I spent about 9 months around this place called the International House of Prayer, which if you look it up, you might, it's fraught with some controversy, but you know, any place I think where there's controversy, hopefully, there are often like pure-minded people that are trying to do the right thing. So I think perhaps the person that did this, I would often see this young man, he was younger than me, I'd be driving and I'd see him miles out from the prayer room, just like walking, kind of muttering to himself, picking flowers. It almost reminds me of it said that the Baal Shem Tov, for any folks that are into Hasidism and Judaism, it said that he was kind of looked like a homeless man for many, many years. He was just kind of a little bit, people would look at him like, this guy's a little nuts. He's just muttering to himself. He's on the bench. And then one day he started teaching, and he became the founder of Hasidus, right? The whole Hasidic Jewish movement. So, you know, and even well, anyway, back to this. So that young man, I was surrounded with a table of folks, and I told them I decided not to use money because for a while I would get in and out of these stages of trying to, I don't know, just let the universe take care of me. And as I'm talking, a carrot appears in my hand, and I take a bite out of it, and I thought, like, in the state I was in, I thought, was that an angel or something? And somebody said, where did he get that carrot, right? So I thought it was this miracle. Now, that this young man that I used to see walking around out there, muttering to himself, one day he came up to me, how do you like that carrot? And I said, wait, that was you? Like, how, like, what? He's like, yeah, something told me to do it. I said, but nobody saw you do it. Like, how did you do that? He's like, I don't know. So, I don't know. So there's something going on, right? It's been going on for a while. So one more story, and then I want to hear your stories. So other times I found myself without money, as I just explained. I was once in this position in Washington, D.C. I became separated from friends I was there with. I passed what appeared to be an unhoused man who asked me for change. I had nothing to give him, so I just walked on. I ignored him. You know, I didn't want to, whatever, like, I don't have anything for you, man. But then I felt bad because I ignored him. So I walked back and apologized. I explained to him that I had no money, and that's why I ignored him. At which point he said, do you need money? And I was like, yeah. And I said, no, thank you, because and then as I walk away, the same thing inside is like, what do you mean you don't need money? Like, you're hungry, you don't have money, like, you need money, just own up. So I go back and I'm like, actually, I'm kind of hungry. So he took his little cup and he counted out $1.07, and he said, with this, 99 cents plus tax, you can get anything on the extra value meal at McDonald's across the street. So I went across the street, I got a fish sandwich. It's my favorite. I mean, I don't really eat McDonald's anymore, but when I did, I think that was my favorite thing on the extra value meal. And when I came back to thank the man, he said to me, you just earned yourself a fish sandwich. And he comes out and he hands me a fish sandwich that was hot. So somehow the Noosphere told him to buy a fish sandwich, and it was just waiting for him to give it to me because I guess I said thank you. And it was exactly, like, it's crazy, right? I mean, I just see people talking to each other. It's this stuff, and I have more, but that's enough, I think. That's enough. So we're up to, and I'm not going to give an example of this, but I've also been on the giving end of interactions like this, seemingly tapped by a higher consciousness to give, at times learning only afterwards that the prompting I received spoke to a specific need the person had at the time. I'll spare you the details now, although I'm always happy to share more during coffee hour and hear from you as well. So hopefully the examples I've given provide you with an idea of this higher consciousness, which I believe I experienced working through the people around me and through me to meet needs. These simple things may not save our planet in and of themselves, but I believe they point to a mechanism that can. A mechanism that, if we all find ourselves in it, will ensure that the needs of everyone on the earth are taken care of. And it's not just utilitarian, it's beautiful. This consciousness is beyond the self. One doesn't know what will happen next. It's an adventure. One of José Argüelles' desires was to see the phrase time is money replaced with the phrase time is art. The higher consciousness is creative. It's not linear, following logically from the next moment. It's a creative, living in the moment process, one that I believe we can all access. And if we slow down and practice being open to this inner knowing, this higher noospheric consciousness, I don't see any other outcome than the formation of the perfect society that so many religions have foretold. For example, as I mentioned, Punsak argued that this perfect society is right around the corner from his perspective as a Buddhist practicing for 30 years, anticipating that bodhicitta, or loving kindness, which sounds very much to me as the consciousness of the noosphere. So he anticipated that bodhicitta will soon be the norm in human society. Concerning the group of folks who adopted the philosophy of José Argüelles, they're expecting the noosphere any moment now. For them, 2012, the end of the Mayan calendar, was the start of a 9-year ramping up period to 13 years of tremendous global instability, culminating in this noosphere of one human consciousness. An interesting prediction, especially since their prediction of the start of this instability, well before it took place, fit right in with COVID and the lockdowns. And since then, we're at no loss, unfortunately, for continued societal instability and upheaval. So they say it's a good ending. We just wait, just got to get through this. This darkness before dawn is an idea that is not foreign to many religions, such as the one I grew up with. Jesus spoke of a time of great distress on the planet that if it wasn't cut short, no one would remain alive. Not very hopeful if we stop there. But he said that when we see these things, we should lift up our heads, for our redemption is at hand. Our redemption as in the end to isolated, individual, selfish human consciousness and the emergence of a single human consciousness where all take care of each other as one global organism, called, like in Christianity, the body of Christ. And Teilhard, whose ideas sparked Argüelles' writings on the matter, definitely was influenced by his own Christian heritage, saying that this noosphere is, quote, the cosmic Christ, the second person of the Trinity. He was a Jesuit, by the way, a Jesuit philosopher, Teilhard. And Argüelles, who was half Mexican and very interested in Mesoamerican cosmology, saw the concept of the noosphere fitting right into the cosmology of the Mayans, just as Punsak sees a similar concept throughout the Buddhist canon. And here at the Unitarian Church, we have our Compassion series, where we invite folks of various religions to talk about how the golden rule, love your neighbor as yourself, can be found in their particular religion. Indeed, it seems to be present in every religion that I've looked into. So this noosphere, where loving our neighbor as ourselves will not be an effort because our neighbor will be ourselves. Our consciousness will not be separate anymore, but collective. As I've already mentioned, the hands will complain that they have to bandage a cut on the knee, but will consider each other as part of the same whole. This seems to me to be the moment that so many religions, and so many who don't consider themselves to be a part of any religion, have longed for and even anticipated. So my prayer is, may this moment come swiftly as we each seek to hasten it by our own compassion for and love and generosity to all beings. Amen. Actually, thanks, Mary. Yeah, I said we're going to have a little talk. So that wasn't on the script, so So Mary's going to share an incident in her life, and then we're going to open the floor. Mary's going to bring the mic around if folks want to share or chat about these ideas.
So I usually don't share these stories, but I'm going to share one from I guess it was a couple of years ago, maybe. Because Dave convinced me I should. I never heard of the word noosphere, by the way, before Dave introduced me to that. I just kind of see it as connecting with the collective consciousness. So this is a story. I had gotten into bed and was preparing to go to sleep, closed my eyes, and it came to me. And I don't, I used to say inner voice, but it's not a voice, and it's not even an inner feeling. It's an inner knowing that becomes very demanding. There was this demand, and to me, initially, it sounded crazy. You have to go look at Facebook. I don't have Facebook on my phone, and I had already turned off my phone onto airplane mode for the night. So initially I tried to ignore this, but it kept getting stronger and stronger. So I had to get up and get dressed and go downstairs. And like I said, I don't have Facebook on my phone, so I had to go look in the internet and go to Facebook. And what popped up was there was a woman who was Facebook friend, but really an acquaintance, I didn't know her well, who had put this message that she was having a severe asthma attack, and the tubing on her nebulizer had broken, and she wasn't sure that the 911 would get to her in time if she managed to get to the phone to call, and she posted this, and I knew her name. I wasn't sure where she lived, but it happened that 2 days before I had cleaned out my closet and found I had exactly that type of piping. And if it had been 3 days before, I would have had no idea where it was or even anything about it, but I had put it in this basket that were things that I didn't need that I was going to give away. So I got dressed, I looked up her name and realized that her address was 2 blocks from me. So I tried to message her on Facebook. I'm on my way. I have this tubing, but she wasn't responding. So anyway, I went over, it's like 11 o'clock at night, at a pretty rapid pace to get to her house, and got her the tubing, and she was okay because she her nebulizer treatment. But I have to say, you know, those types of things, I think when you open yourself up to that, whatever you want to call it, noosphere, collective consciousness, start to happen to you more and more often.
I had no idea about the noosphere either, but I do know about having a connection with people. So 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 4 uterine carcinosarcoma. So I made my first trip to the oncologist at Sloan Kettering. This guy is so weird. He looks like he should be the guy that refills the drink machines or something. His clothes are like literally from the 60s. He's got like a t-shirt and jeans and sandals and looks like a very strange guy. So I have my first appointment, and he doesn't even look at me. He just looks down at my chart and says, "You know this isn't curable, don't you?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I already knew that." And it was so interesting. You know, he's like all you can do is the chemo, and that's all you can do. And I took it to mean it wasn't curable, man. I was out of here. So I came home and made my will and did all that stuff. And then as I didn't die, I got to know the guy better, and we kind of found out we were on the same wavelength. And where was this going? Oh, I found out it was his crisis. It wasn't because of me that he was looking down at this paper. It was because he didn't feel like he was doing everything he could for people with what he was doing at Sloan Kettering. And try to make the long story a little shorter, I had this, like in the appointment with him, the later appointment, I had this urge that I had to tell him about. There's a pilgrimage path in Spain called Compostela de Santiago. And my son, Chris, had done an opera about it that was just mind-boggling. The opera was called Path of Miracles, and I'm like, "Dr. Connor, I don't know why I'm supposed to tell you about this. Have you heard of the Path of Miracles?" He's like, "No," and I'm telling him everything I know about it. And I don't know if that ever happened or not, but he quit Sloan Kettering to study psychedelics, and he's coming back now as a psychedelic oncologist to work with people's minds instead of their bodies.
Hi, I'm Mike Matthews. This is the first time I've been here. My friend Bill sent me the email that you had sent, and I was struck because you mentioned Teilhard de Chardin. In college, so I do know about the Noosphere. I studied him and read him and was very impressed by him because he's a paleontologist as well as a theologian. Anyway, I said, oh my, this is, I have to come. But not only that, I have a group of friends from college that I get together with every other week. We call ourselves the Zoomangos. We're on Zoom and we're men. So it turns out that one of my friends graduated from Regis High School, and somehow or other we started talking about Teilhard de Chardin. And he said, you know, he ended up in New York City, and I was taught by individuals who knew him personally. And I'm saying, this was like a week and a half ago. So I said, I have to come today. And I don't even know exactly why or whatever, but it was just sort of, and it reminds me of, for those of you know, call Jung synchronicities. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. Anyway, that's my story.
Wow, it's very interesting. I never thought of any of this before, even though weird things have always happened in my life. But a couple weeks ago, I was looking for something in my office, and I went, and I had recently moved some stuff out of my office. That's how I clean. I move stuff to another place. And I had moved all this stuff to this other office, and this thing I was looking for I couldn't find. Which was a smart cane that I had bought. And so we went into the office where I had dumped all my stuff and looking for it. And then I found this bag with all my important papers, my immigration papers, what you call that, citizenship, whatever that is, everything that's important. I don't know why it was there, but I said, oh my God. And I grabbed it, and I took it, and I says, you know, this is something that needs to be in a safe place. Why is it among all this stuff? So the next day I had an appointment with motor vehicle to get my real ID, and everything that was in that bag I needed. Do you know what I would have done had I not found it the day before? I would have tore my apartment. I would have called every agency in the world. And literally, when I went on the way home from the motor vehicle, I was literally crying because it was so profound, and I didn't understand it. It was overwhelming that that sequencing happened.
Am I on? I have several experiences, and I'm going to do them short and quick. They all involve family. It never goes further than my family of origin. Number one, I used to live in California. It was 4 o'clock in the morning, and I woke up from a dream that my brother was in trouble. This is 4 o'clock. I would never call my home. I wouldn't want to wake them up. I called my mother right away. I'm just making this short, and she said to me, your father just went down to your brother's apartment. He was in trouble. Someone was stabbing him. I don't want to say more about this, from the inside of the apartment. Your father just broke down the door and got your brother out, number one. Number two, my brother had a heart problem. He had to have a stent. And he went in, and on this is emotional for me, on the, they have a computer in front of him, and they have the list of the names going in for the operation. On that list was my father's name. It wasn't I don't believe it was a mistake in the hospital. My father had been dead years. He went into the operation, and he came out, and he said during the operation, he saw my father, and my father said, you're going to be okay. He's been fine. And other people, I have read, people who come out of anesthesias and see their families. Very often this happens, and it could be biological, and it could be the anesthesia that you get. But you do come out, and if you have a positive result, feeling about something that happens on the way out, it does help with healing. They say they have correlated studies with this. So, number 3, and I'll end with this. At age 73, my mother had a disease called temporal arteritis. In those days, they typed the reports, and they had big x-rays. Well, I was looking for my resume one day, and I went into the file folder where all of these old reports were, and I pulled out my mother's report, just out of curiosity, and I saw on the side of the typewritten report was a little handwritten note, and the doctor had written, right temple, there's a vein here, temple is protruding. I didn't think anything of it. Very shortly after, I got the same disease. And I was in the doctor's office. They couldn't figure it out. I was in after hours, and it was a dangerous situation. And I remembered the report, and I said, "Doctor," because I had my hair over like this, you can't see, "look at my right temple." And he looked and he said, and these are the words, "Slam dunk, Ellen. That's what it is. It's temporal arteritis. Go get prednisone right now." And I was okay. So those are 3. I have a little more.
Hi, I'm Joanna. I have some instances like this too. I learned about it first from a stranger at the library I used to work at. She called it the theory of non-duality, which is pretty much the similar thing. And one of the instances that happened to me recently was when I moved from Maine back here to home in New York. And there's situations where I know when it's the time, and I see the path directly in front of me, and people come to you with exactly the information that you need at exactly the right time. I had a stranger again who was talking to me about changing careers and thinking that even though she's really comfortable in a place, she knew that she had to explore and be uncomfortable to grow. And that was really helpful. And then a second instance where I was at the YMCA and the instructor for the class put on Ventura Highway by America, and there's a line in it that says, "How long are you going to stay here, Joe?" And so I thought, oh, that's kind of speaking to me. And then a third person who was a visiting pastor at my old church who also talked about moving away from home and exploring new places, even though she really loved where she was and loved the career that she had, that she felt that drive. And these things come in 3s sometimes, and they just tell you exactly what you needed from people that don't know that, but they come into your life at exactly the right time. Recently it happened with my dad as well, who was having knee surgery. And with that theory of the 3s, he was in the waiting room and he was really nervous. He talked to a guy in the waiting room, and his name was Joseph, which is his dad's name. And he said another man in the waiting room was wearing a gingham shirt buttoned all the way to the top, just like his dad did. And he said that his nurse's name was Joanna. So he felt comfortable again. And I think it happens often like that, where it's just exactly the right pieces come into play. Sometimes it's through dreams, sometimes it's just people thinking, we need to be at this place, or I need to really talk to you about this, or I thought you would really need this item or whatever. But as long as you're open to it, I feel like that path is always in front of you. Thanks.
Thanks. I'm just going to step over to the side here for a second. So I'm a psychoanalytic psychotherapist, and Dave and I bumped into each other at the Y about a week ago, right, Dave? Yeah. And we did a little side-by-side on the elliptical, and he was asking me about my profession. And, we were talking about it a little bit, and Dave had studied psychology a bit, and so it was kind of an interesting conversation. And one of the things that I was telling him is that psychoanalytically we understand that the unconscious speaks to the unconscious. And so, you often wonder these strange things where suddenly this thing that you're thinking about, somebody pops up and you're having the conversation. And, whether this is intuition or coincidence, and I can't speak to the miracle of the carrot or the fish sandwich, but you've noticed probably that somehow you always end up talking to or getting connected to somebody that either presents a continuing challenge to you. So it's a repetition compulsion. I had this experience before, I'm having this experience again, and I'm having this experience again, all with different people. I was just this morning thinking about how 3 of my very closest friends were all master gardeners. They weren't master gardeners when I met them, but they became master gardeners. And during the course of all of this, I became interested in gardening myself, although I was not in conversation, because this is going back 40 years, I was not in conversation with these women at the time, and yet it evolved that they were incredible gardeners, and I had my own modest little connection to gardening. How does that happen? So, you know, a lot of this stuff is totally not able to be understood. I just got Michael Pollan's new book on consciousness, which I just started reading. I mean, literally starting the first chapter. And this whole thing is there's so little we know about consciousness and the role of the unconscious. And he's now talking about consciousness across the spectrum, not just we Western civilizations who have already set out, we have a canon, what is it? This is what consciousness is. And he's saying now, thought is, perhaps we know plants are sentient. And then maybe we've made a mistake in dividing everything up into what we know and experience, and the rest, which is dead, and maybe we're wrong. So maybe all of these strange things that we connect up to without even knowing where it comes from is involved in this whole mystery of how everything in creation connects to everything else.
Yeah, I agree. I want to jump in on that, Ruth, because just even before you spoke about the life of the trees and everything, when you were just talking about the quote-unquote coincidence of the gardener, like 3 friends, a gardener, me gardener, I thought of, lest this be so woo-woo, and it's like, this is not scientific, what is this? Bohm, am I right, Jonathan? He talks about implicate order. He's a physicist, a particle physicist, and his thesis, and I think many physicists' thesis, is that, quantum, I'm sorry, thank you, is that, right, the order, we think there's this linear order, we make these connections in life, but what Bohm and others are saying is that there's an order deeper than this order, and that, my understanding of it, I haven't read very far in it, but these connections of the gardeners, things like that, there might be an order like that underlies what we normally think of as the order of our universe.
Yeah, my Substack is filled with David Bohm and Jung and synchronicity and precognition. I've been writing about this for about 30 years. But rather than share stories about it, I just wanted to, at the end maybe of this, is share my favorite Chardin quote. Let me get this right. We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience.
Not a whole lot to add. I feel very kindred with everybody here. I love the conversation. This is going to share my mother, Roberta, who's sitting next to me, is also a clinical psychologist, and so we had a lot of Jungian books around the house. And really, as a kid, I dove into them a lot. And I'm not sure what came first, the consciousness, the awareness. I don't know. But, I do believe that trusting in inner guidance has been my path. And it brought me home, I think, before anybody asked me to come home. But there's a lot of comfort in it, and I do believe there's an openness. If you make yourself open to that, the guidance continues to show up for you. And I do a lot of reading as well, and a lot of it. I'm interested in that. I didn't study it like my mother did, but I've always been very interested, and the concept of synchronicity has definitely followed my life in a great comfort. And then, I'm a musician as well, so sometimes I think that in music, we are communing on a level that kind of taps into a bigger consciousness. And I was a Police fan as well, the band, and Synchronicity was an album of the Police. I did love that. I do believe that when we really follow music very deeply, we tend to commune. There's a transmission that happens in the music where you are communing with something greater, and then that has continued to show up for me as well, affirmations of that. It's quite a comfort.
As I've mentioned, I've been writing on Medium.com, and I've made a series, Synchronicities, and so I had to. Synchronicity 1 was a synchronicity with the album Synchronicity 1 by the Police. I won't spoil it, but I once had a synchronicity with Synchronicity.
Morning, I'm Maureen. I had an interesting experience last week. I got up and I was debating, do I want to go to church? Oh, Dorothy Day, I've already heard, we must have her every other Women's History Month, and I came to church and Christy Pfizer was in the pulpit. How do you say it? Pfister was in the pulpit. And her talk was very good, but she also had done all these beautiful mosaic tile works about Dorothy Day, which I found very moving. But at the same time, I had just that week started a class on mosaic tiles. And I love art, but I'm not, my hand, my eyes, and my brain don't all sort of go in the same direction when I want them to. But I was like, here I am now going to this mosaic tile class, and I'm feeling a little like, I don't know, these people, they all know each other, maybe this isn't where I belong, and come on, what are you trying art again for? You're like, it's not your thing, just accept it, you're a creative person and go with that. But so I went into the class and I had so much more to say to people, and so I said, I showed the teacher who I do know, look at these about Dorothy Day. Then I looked at the woman behind me, and she wasn't doing the project that we're supposed to be working on in the class. She was doing a thing. I learned a whole new concept about, thank you, yes, about Fibonacci. So I learned about the Fibonacci's, and she was doing this beautiful thing, and then I showed her all my photos that I had taken last week being here, and she said, oh, the Unitarian Church, I'm good friends with Bonnie, and I have to tell her that I met you. And it just made me feel so much more comfortable in the class, and the things that I was, concerned about sort of all came together, and I was so glad that I had the experience of being here last Sunday, and that the timing just seemed like it could not have been better, and that's and also what people are saying. I think often in my life I've made, I think a lot about the friends I've known over the years, even people, like I tend to keep my friends for a long time, but you meet lots of people, you can't keep them all, they move on, and I've just always feel like I've met the right people at the right time, and I've been very blessed to have good friends and people who, who are, I don't know, as different as I can be sometimes, and who are so loving and caring and compassionate. And I think I shared a few weeks ago the story that I went on Facebook also, and it was first thing in the morning, and I saw my friend in Australia had put that she can't sleep because she's so upset about what's going on in the world, and I decided, usually I would consult the world clock before I called her, but I called her and I just wasn't paying attention, so the phone kept ringing and ringing, and she had to get out of bed, and she's old, and but it was such a lovely conversation, and we were so happy to reconnect and to be able to be there for each other. So, there's a lot of these things that happen in life with synchronicity, and that bring us in the full circle, and, I'm glad to be here today and to be part of this world and think about these things that I might not be thinking about if I were home just drinking my coffee.
And I found that the fact that you didn't consult the world clock, I found so many times that impedes synchronicity. I can't do that because blah, blah, blah. And then you don't do it. But then a lot of times I would do that, and then I would find later, wait, if I had done that, it would have worked perfectly. So I think that, I see it as right brain, left brain. Maybe I shouldn't see it that way, but that more creative, spontaneous versus the police. No, you can't do that. What time is it in Australia? You can't call your friend. That's not the one to listen to, and I've found.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing.
change is good. We're changing to the teal hymnal. Please turn to 1052, and let's rise and sing out in good voice, because who knows who might hear you anywhere in the world. We'll have to wait until the leader puts his reading glasses on. Thank you, Carol. Far beyond the grasp of hands, our light to meet the eye, past the reacher of the mind. There, from the key to nature's harmony, in an architecture so entwined, like the birds whose patterns grace the sky and carry all who join in love expanding. The message of peace will rise in flight, taking the weight of the world upon its wings, in the oneness of everything. Peace is in the dance of trees, whose sight before the first breath of wind is yet perceived. Trust in the song becoming one with the dance, and all mysteries can be believed. Songs of life long past that touch our own are written in the earth and regiving. And now to maintain the harmony gives to us all lives worth living, for the oneness of everything. Still we seek to find a truth that we might understand and reduce to terms defined. Vast and immeasurable time and space, also overwhelmingly designed. Oh, passing years, just might I know the fate that winters in the heart to be reborn in spring, to hear and to feel the pulse of life enters my soul as a song to sing of the oneness of everything.
And so ends our service. Please join us in the parish hall for hospitality.
Yeah, but first we're going to have Eric and John play the postlude.
Sorry about that.
And actually, first I'm going to read the closing words. And the cellos, yeah. We're just not linear right now. That whole talk, it's just, we're in the Noosphere, guys.
I invite you to join me in extinguishing our chalice. You can find the information in your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. For these we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
And the closing words are, again from Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, from his Hymn of the Universe. He writes, "The day will come when, after harnessing space, the winds, the tides, and gravitation, we shall harness for God the energies of love. And on that day, for the second time in the history of the world, man will have discovered fire."
Hoping now it's syncing. Whatever. I think it's fine. This is a traditional tune called Coleman's March. Should we just tune?
Just one announcement before we close. For those of you who wanted to join our spiritual growth circle in our field trip to the talk about Dorothy Day by her granddaughter Martha Hennessy, we'll be meeting in the library at 1 o'clock after the hospitality. And this time, for real, sorry about that false ending, and so ends our service. Please join us in the parish hall for hospitality.